All right, so the first thing is mentoring. How do we do it? Individually, mentoring, right? That is to say, we have to inject ourselves into the communities within which we are placed, in which we identify. Oftentimes, those of us who acquire a certain status, a certain kind of professional place, right, we find ourselves moving out of, right, communities that shaped us, right? So much so that we don't interact with folk who can anymore, right? And I'm guilty of this in interesting sorts of ways. I'm the most educated Negro ever produced in my hometown. I'm from Moss Point, Mississippi, right? About that many of us. I always
right. I'm from Macomb, Mississippi.
You see? So you know what I'm talking about, right? So
all from Mississippi. Some way or another.
Some way or another.
Trace your ancestry.
But part of this has to do with, right, I left when I was 15. Right? And my connection to that community is very typical in interesting sorts of ways, right? So how do I then interact? How do I interact in Trenton? What do I do in Newark? Right? How do I, in some significant way, mentor another young brother or sister in order to kind of, how should we say, broaden their horizons? Does that make sense? Right? So they can imagine themselves beyond the neighborhood that they find themselves. So the first thing has to do with mentoring. The second thing has to do with policy. Right? Policy. There's an individual kind of responsibility, but then there's a structural responsibility. What sorts of policies are being passed or being implemented that affect the life chances of people we care most about? So, for example, I've been part of. I was appointed by the governor of New Jersey to participate on a kind of committee to rethink sentencing in the state of New Jersey. Everybody, as you know, every state now is trying to figure out what to do with the booming cost of incarceration, how it's impacting their budgets, right? And part of the thing that we wanted to talk about was just what happens in New Jersey, because New Jersey is one of the most urban spaces, urban states in the country, right? And so you had this law which said that if you sold drugs within X number of feet to a school, right, you're going to get extra time, right? But in Newark, there's a school like every other block, right? In Patterson, in Trenton, in Jersey City. And so part of what we wanted to do was to have a dialogue about how we can impact it. So I was in conversation, positioned in such a way to be in conversation with Cory Booker, to be in conversation with other folks, so that we can impact policy. Those of you who are professionals, you will have access to influence, you will be able to influence decision making. How do you do it? So individually, we mentor. Right? In terms of our professional roles, we need to try to impact policy.
And I have 4 words for all males in this room. It's going to impact your life instantly. Those 4 words are simply this: listen to the woman. You're going to be okay. So when I tell people everything I learned about life and everything I learned about sports and basketball, I learned from my 7 sisters. It's usually with the movie. My plays are named after my 7 sisters. That's my team. So if you have a team and family, you can almost endure anything. Now, we were so broke in Mississippi that we had to save up to be poor. You understand? We was tore up from the floor up. But see, we're not spiritual beings having a human experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. And there's a difference, young people, between being broke and being poor. Being broke is just an economic condition. But being poor is a disabling frame of mind and a depressed condition of your spirit. You must vow never to let your church, your household, your family, your cousin Mookie, you understand? Ever be poor. It's okay for them to be broke. Ask any college freshman, they'll let you know what being broke is about. You have experienced it. And think your family is supposed to borrow money from you and not pay you back. That's why God called them family. The first 2 letters of family, think about it. FA. That stands for financial aid. But see, young people, you're 1/3 of our population, but you're 100% of our future. Now, in Richmond, California, it is the most dangerous city in the state of California. And 50% of the kids who enter Richmond High School never ever graduate. And you are 80 times more likely, if you're a black male, to go to jail than you are to go to college, unless you play for Coach Charlie. I have a 100% graduation rate, and every senior who has ever played for me have gone on to college. And so what I see with young males today, they always nag and complain. I don't like naggers. I get it done. I have 7 of these championship rings. salvation, but you're 100% of our future. See, if you give people wiggle room, that's what they will do. They will wiggle. See, I have one excuse I accept for missing my basketball practice. I've never had a kid miss my basketball practice in 10 years of coaching. The only excuse I accept is you die. Period. I don't care about your mama, your daddy, your sister, your cousin Mookie. None of them. Your mama and them don't count. You need to be here. This is your family. Period. Because when you get wiggle room, guess what people do? They wiggle. I don't make excuses, young people, because I don't accept any excuses. Period. That's the way I run my camp. We don't take summer vacations. The parents come with me and mama tell me I'm taking summer vacation. Please. We got 130 games to play this summer. We got to get it done.
It all starts with one single concept, in my view, and that is education. 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 If you think about the cultural issues that we continue to try to resolve, the fact is that there are so many different cultures within the African American community, and they never will be one. Those of us who have come from different parts of the culture of the African American community, whether our ancestry is from the Caribbean or from different parts of Africa or from different parts of the United States. I know people of color, African American people who I know who are from the western side of Michigan who think and act and respond differently than people on the eastern side of the state. It's not to say that we don't have an identity as African Americans, but to try to resolve the quote-unquote cultural issue, to me the critical aspect of the cultural issue is to insist that wherever we're from, whatever our backgrounds, whatever our economic condition, that we don't use poor, as Coach Carter says, as an excuse for failure, but rather challenge each and every one of us, no matter what our situation, to get the education that is necessary in order to begin the process of being prepared to succeed in our society. What do I mean by that? You heard the terrible statistics about African Americans in prison. Well, the fact is that there's a direct correlation between the number of African American males who are in contact with the criminal justice system and third grade reading levels in every community across the country. Direct correlation. States gauge the number of prison cells to build by the number of children who learn to read by third grade. And when they see that number going down, they realize that they need more prison capacity for the future of their states. In recent years, in states like Michigan, we have increased our level of incarceration so that Michigan is now among the top 10 states for per capita incarceration. But the United States is #1 among industrialized countries today with respect to the number of people who are incarcerated per capita. We have surpassed South Africa in terms of it and its terrible history of apartheid and subjugation of people of color in terms of the number of people per capita that we have incarcerated. And it's a direct result of failing to teach our young people to read. From kindergarten to third grade, you learn to read. From third grade on, for the rest of your life, you read to learn. If you don't learn to read, you can't read to learn. And that's where it all starts. So what I'm asking all of you to do in terms of thinking about the future of the African American male in this society is to focus on education. How can you do that? Well, the distinguished professor talked about mentorship. Coach Carter talked about standards and involving kids in extracurricular activities and expecting them to succeed and to adhere to the rules, expecting our children to learn to read.